Hello, I'm Hannah and I'm here to take you through how to set up and use reserves on Scribe. So we are logged into my fictitious Scribe Parish Council in 24-25 and I'm going to take you through how to set up your reserves, that being the specific pots of money that you want to show that you are holding separately for projects or other specific purposes. To do that, you will firstly need to go down to the setup menu. And within that, you've got an option for reserves. So you can click into there. You can see I've already got some set up, but if this is the first time you're adding reserves into Scribe, this will be a blank screen and you need to add them in from your list or spreadsheet or current information that you have. To do so, you would just click the circular blue plus at the top to add a new record. Firstly, then we need the name of the reserve. So we are going to, in this instance, say works to the village pond. If you want to give a further description of what the reserve relates to, then you can do so in the description. Then you need to allocate the reserve a type. So that's either capital or earmarked. So earmarked is probably the most usual one that you'll be using. So that is a specific purpose or project that you're carrying out. Capital relates to fixed asset items, so disposals of fixed assets over 10k have to be spent on capital items, so fixed assets, repayment of loans, etc. In this example, then it's an earmarked reserve. This doesn't matter hugely, but it's how it will be categorised on the report that we'll look at later, and also on the balance sheet if you're an income expenditure user. Moving on, Scribe will then ask, when was this reserve first created? It doesn't have to be the specific date, but what we need to determine is whether the reserve existed last year and therefore has an opening balance in the current year, or whether it's a new reserve in this year and therefore there was no opening balance, but actually we're going to receive some money into the reserve, maybe by way of a grant or moving some money from another reserve or budget line. So if it existed last year, so if you're starting off and adding in reserves that you had last year and therefore you want opening balances, you need to put a date that is in the previous financial year. So you can just use the 31st of March, and you can see by doing that, it's given me a separate field now for the opening reserve. If I put a date in the current financial year, I don't get that option because I'm saying it was only set up in this year and therefore there was not an opening balance. So we put in the figure that we started the year with. So let's say we started with £3,000. You can then add any further notes that you want to, and you can also attach some files. So that might be to do with the work that you're doing. So it could be any invoices, plans, project timetables, photos, whatever you want to put in there with regards to managing the reserve. Once you've done that, you just click add and it will appear in the list, and then you would just continue the process of going through and adding them in from your list. Once you've done that, it's best to check what you've done by looking at the reserve report, and you can do that by going up to actions in the top right hand corner and clicking on view report. The report will load as it has here. It's very likely that you're going to see this red error message appearing, and I'll show you shortly how to fix that. But firstly, what we want to do is check what we've done with regards to the setup. So just check that you've got your reserve set up as you're expecting, allocated either to sit under capital or earmarked under the subheadings on the report. You've got the correct opening balances in, and that starting figure at the bottom of your total opening reserves matches to your list or spreadsheet that you are working from. If not, if there's any errors here, you would need to go back to the screen we were just in and tweak anything that's incorrect. Once you're happy with that, then we need to move on to resolving this red message that we're seeing at the top here. Now that's done back under the setup menu. And then we have under the reserves option, the next option down is restate last year here. Now we can resolve that red message by going to the Funds tab. And we're seeing that error simply because Scribe can't match up what we've said is our opening reserves position with what we've then set up. So you will therefore need to make sure you've got all your opening balances with regards to your funds. So that is the breakdown of your box 7 from your accounting statements for last year in here. If you don't have the information at the point that you're doing this, you'll just have to come back to this later on. There will be that red message until that's resolved, but if you don't have the opening balances, then that's fine and you can do so later. But once you know what the last year's figures were, so you've completed your year end for the prior financial year, you can put the figures in here. One of that will be your box 7 figure at the bottom. And what you need to make sure is two things. Firstly, is that these fields on the left-hand side, so capital plus earmarked plus general, matches to that figure at the bottom. So this is a breakdown of your funds carried forward. And then secondly, that the reserves that you've set up, which are the total figures here on the right, match to those on the left. So what we've told Scribe as our opening balance is represented by what we've set up. Now, because we've just added that new reserve for £3,000, you can see I've got a discrepancy. So I need to correct this and say, actually, I was in a scenario where I started the financial year with 57,455 in my earmarked, and therefore those two match. And then I just need to make sure that the sum of these three still comes back to my box 7. We don't want to amend our box 7 because that was our closing funds. We just need to tweak the breakdown between them. So we need to amend our general fund here to be the balancing figure, so that these three sum to this figure at the bottom. So we can save that once done. And then we can return to our reserves balance report. So we can also get that by going up into the main menu up here further up. And the first option, reserve balance, is the report that we were just in. Run that, and then just make sure that we're checking that that message has now disappeared. And it has. So now we can move on.